I am not easily spooked. It takes a lot to throw me off balance. But the story I'm about to tell you really did shake me up and left me wondering if it's ever really going to be over. I am a 29-year-old single woman. My career has been my main focus, and as a result, I've been successful at what I do. I'm a safety consultant, and I go to people's homes or workplaces to improve the safety. Maybe it's my profession that made me feel like nothing bad would ever happen to me. Spotting risks and dealing with them is what I do best after all. It started innocently enough. The first time I remembered seeing him was when I was stuck in traffic and he was the driver in the car behind me. I saw him in the rearview mirror. He was smiling and doing a "what can you do about it" gesture. He had snacks in a thermos and started to make himself comfy in the car. He seemed like a relaxed kind of guy. The cause of the traffic block was an accident and we were stuck for a long time. I guess that is why I remembered his face and his car so well later. Later that same week, I was on my way home from work, which is a 20-minute drive, and I spot his white Volvo behind me once more. I make my way through town and he is still behind me. At this point, my overly risky calculating mind tells me not to go straight home. I was not feeling threatened or scared, just mentally making notes that this man seemed to drive the exact same route as I do. I stop at a coffee shop and set off on a mission to feed my caffeine addiction. And when I came back out, I had almost forgotten about this Volvo. That was until I stop at the last red light before reaching my street, and I see him behind me again. I wondered if he wanted to ask me something. As I got out of my car, I had my pepper spray ready in my pocket, just in case, but the Volvo drove straight past me, the driver not even looking my way. I'm just being overly paranoid then, I thought. My co-workers said it would happen if you stayed in this business long enough. Fast forward a few days. I was working late one night and suddenly I got a text message. I got the kind of alarm system at my house that will send you a text if anyone tries to get into or tamper with the alarm. I hurried home to check, but found nothing out of order. A case of malfunctioning, maybe? The next morning, my boss phoned and asked if I wanted to go and meet with a client out of town. He had asked for me, a recommendation from another client. Flattered and eager to land a new big client, I agreed. Since I have zero talent for reading maps and finding my way, I used the GPS in my phone to get the address right. The longer I drove, the less eager I became. The risk calculator in my mind woke up, pointing its index finger at the things that didn't totally make sense. Why did the client say no to the normal process? A telephone contact to discuss the situation and get a picture of that it can cost to get us involved? Why a meeting right away? And why did he not give any details of what sort of property it was? I stopped the car and considered the situation. Was I overthinking it? Had I started to become really paranoid without noticing? Or was there something strange about this? I decided that I was probably seeing patterns that weren't there and went ahead to find the address. It was hard as the GPS on the phone stopped working, no service out in the middle of nowhere. As I saw the property, I got a strange feeling again. It didn't look like a place anyone would invest any significant amount of money in to protect. It was an old building, old tires and junk scattered around the yard and nothing of value anywhere to be seen. Who would want to go out of their way to protect this? Following my instincts, I drove around the property to the back of the building. I didn't see anyone around, which added to the growing feeling of get the fuck out of here. As I drove around the corner, I saw a tarp covering a car. The tarp was too small to cover the entire vehicle, and I immediately recognized the shape and color of the white Volvo. I locked the doors and started to turn the car around. Suddenly, there he was, blocking my exit. He was dressed in a suit that looks like he had last seen the light of day when his grandpa was young. He wasn't smiling anymore, not looking like a nice, relaxed guy. In fact, he was looking nervous and strained. He started walking towards me, and I saw that he was wearing thick leather gloves despite the hot weather. I then looked for an alternative way, Because, let's face it, you don't want to run a person over if you can avoid it. It would be hard to claim self-defense without any harm done to me. Maybe he was just a socially challenged person who didn't know how to show his interest in a normal way. "Come on out," he said. His voice sugar sweet, but his face showed no emotion. "Get out of my way," I shouted, opening the window a tiny bit. "I just want to talk. Please shut the engine off and talk to me," he pleaded. "I made scones specially for you. I just want to chat." Saying this, he looked very sad and defeated, and lonely, and I almost fell for it. What if he was really lonely and just wanted to invite someone over and had no idea how to do it? The gloves, the hidden car, the alarm system at your house, my inner voice reminded me. "Please, don't be mad. I just wanted to surprise you. Don't you like surprises? All the magazines say that you should surprise your lady with spontaneous romantic things. And I cooked, just for you. Please, at least let me show you the decorations I made. Please." He thinks I'm his girlfriend. Holy shit. "Okay," I smiled. "You spooked me at first, that's all. But I recognize you now. I'll just park the car on the front yard and then we can go have scones." The moment I had finished my sentence, he started shaking his head no. "Park here, it's okay." "Okay," I said, still smiling as convincing as I could, turning off the engine. Then I started pulling at the lock door, pretending it was stuck. "Oh my god, the door is doing this again," I sighed. "Damn it. I meant to get it fixed, but I never have the time to take it to the garage. You know what it's like, right? Maybe you can do it for me someday, sweetie." He nods happily and runs up to the car to help me with the door. "Pull downwards and give it a yank real hard," I instructed as I slowly moved my hand to the key in the ignition. I got the car going with him still holding onto the door for dear life. He cried and screamed and kicked as he had to let go. I drove home, constantly looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the Volvo. As I stopped at the gas station to phone the police, my boss and I started to feel sorry for him. How sad a life he must have. The police arrived at the location, but the Volvo man wasn't there anymore. Turned out he didn't own the place either. It was all a lie. They did, however, find a table for two, with roses and scones and, now, cold tea. They also found a box in the bathroom containing duct tape, cuffs, a woman's nightgown, and a jewellery box with an engagement ring. In the kitchen, in an old bread box, they found photos of me taken from a car, and photos of my house. I don't know if this is over, if he has found someone else to propose to, or if he is planning to try again with me. I have since started to bring my gun to most places, and if he does try again, I will be ready. A part of me feels sorry for him, for being so at odds with the rest of the world. Another part, my inner survivalist, is ready to take him down the moment he suggests that we have scones and tea again. This happened 2 years ago, and I can't believe I still work there after this horrifying experience. Maggie and I and a few other employees were folding panties and organising bras when a couple of women in their later 20s strolled in. They had a shady vibe about them that made me really nervous. They both were wearing sunglasses, and it was 8 o'clock at night, which just seemed off to me, like they did not want to be noticed or identified or something. We work at a Victoria's Secret, so we always have to keep an eye out for thieves since our items are so expensive and valuable. One of the women who walked in looks to be about 8 months pregnant and was browsing through one of our panty tables when it appeared to us that she was stuffing items in her bag. Maggie and I walked closer to her without looking too obvious, and we watched as she seemed to be sneaking panties in her shirt. This is when I realised she was sticking them up in her belly. She was wearing a strap-on belly and lifting it just enough to stick them in it. It must have been hollowed out. As I went to find a manager, Maggie spoke in the headset that the girl was now going over to one of the bra sections and hiding behind a rack of clothes. That's when I hear it. "Hey bitch, are you talking about me? You think I'm stealing, don't you?" Maggie froze in fear and assured her she wasn't talking about her. The pregnant girl kept yelling about how we were racist against black people and how we always only think black people steal. My manager then walked over to calm the situation while calling security just in case it got violent. Unfortunately, we constantly deal with customers stealing, which is a real nuisance, but we aren't allowed to confront them for safety reasons. We have to call the mall cops and they have to call the real cops to come, which can take a while. And since the mall is closing soon, they just made them leave the mall. You might be wondering why they don't search the ladies. Well, mall cops are different than real officers and are prohibited from searching anyone unless they actually see someone stealing something themselves. So, security came and escorted the pregnant lady, who obviously wasn't, and her friend to one of the exit doors and then came back to make sure we were okay. We were fine and thought it was over. But come to find, we were wrong. Maggie and I were off at 9, so we clocked out and walked out of the store talking about how awkward that was and how clever but weird it was that she was wearing a fake belly. It's so scary and disturbing the lengths people will go to steal merchandise. That's when we hear, "That's them!" Maggie and I look behind us and see the pregnant girl and her friend with 3 big black guys. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. One of them is carrying what seems like a knife and they started literally sprinting at us. They yelled a bunch of profanity at us and threatening that we were going to be sorry for what we did. Maggie and I start booking it as fast as we can to our cars, which were parked close to each other while screaming in fear. Thankfully, they were far enough away that we were able to get into our cars and drive off before they got to us. They definitely had a grudge against us for the store incident and they wanted to hurt us. While driving fast, I made sure I was not being followed since that group of people were extremely mad and crazy for wanting to potentially kill us over stolen underwear. We told security the next day and our manager and security reviewed the cameras but could not identify them, unfortunately. Now, every time I leave work, I leave with multiple people and check the whole area before walking to my car. I also now own a mace. This took place in 2002 when I was 17 years old. I am the son of a journalist couple and an only child. At the time, we lived in a house on the countryside. My mum would usually work from her home office, but now and then drive into town and work from there. She worked for a magazine at the time focused on fishing, hunting and outdoorsy stuff. My dad was on the other side of the journalist spectrum, working for a large newspaper and known for digging up interesting stories on a regular basis. In the autumn of 2002, a cop came to my school to warn us about the fact that a MC gang were recruiting young people in the area and told us not to go near the old quarry because that was supposedly where they liked to hang out. I didn't think much of it. But over dinner that night, I told my parents and my dad, smelling a story, decided to do some digging. So, he started to dive past the old quarry at odd hours, but never saw anything interesting. We started to think that the police just wanted us not to hang out there because it was a dangerous place to be in general. Fast forward until spring. During the winter, my mum, tired of being alone in the house all day, had bought a dog, a fun-loving Rhodesian Ridgeback mix. She took that dog for long walks and one day ended up in the wood area behind the quarry. She saw a strange hole in the ground and later described it as grave-like. The next day, she brought my dad to see it, only to find it covered up, again in a very grave-like manner. They decided to phone the police, risking that it was nothing and embarrassing themselves, but not calling it in would leave them sleepless. So, you guessed it. They found a dead body, a member of another MC gang. My dad again smelled a promising story and wrote article after article about the MC gangs and found out about their business and criminal behaviour. One day, he got a note saying something like, I know where your wife walks that dog. It would be a shame if she fell into a hole. And your boy should be careful driving. Accidents happen so easily on the road. These notes basically infuriated my dad even more, and so he wrote more about them. One day after school, I arrived home in the afternoon. I had my earplugs in, listening to music and minding my own business when I felt a hand on my shoulder. A firm grip. Not the light tap you expect from someone just wanting your attention. I turn around and there is this guy. Tattooed face and beard. That would put Santa to shame. No doubt what kind of fella he was, so to speak. Listen, kid. I don't particularly like to destroy such young lives, but you really got your dad to thank for this. He backed me up against the wall of the guest house and informed me that he would try and not fuck up my kneecaps, since they are apparently difficult to heal. Just mess you up enough to shut your dad up. He punched me in the solar plexus and naturally, I collapsed on the ground with an indescribable kind of sound. He backed up, getting ready to continue, but was interrupted by another noise. Something primal and clearly threatening. Rescue came, in the shape of a very pissed off and sharp-teethed Rhodesian Ridgeback. Turns out, my mum had been out walking the dog in the area behind the house and heard the car pull up. I didn't, thanks to the earplugs. She let go of the dog, knowing that the Rhodesian will fight till death for its pack, and phoned the police. The dog never had to bite. The growl was enough to make the man excuse himself and leave. We moved very, very shortly after this.